And let's just take a breath together. I love that song. Rise up. This is a time for us to rise up. That's what we think of at Easter time, rising up. Easter's a time for joy and celebration and a time of a triumphant time, a time of overcoming. And that's what we think of with Easter Sunday. And I can remember the joy as a child of Easter Sunday. I was, as Christian was singing, I was thinking about the Easter parades that we used to have in the South when I was a child. In my hometown, there were three churches, and they had Easter programs, and there was one at 1 o'clock, and there was one at 3 o'clock, and there was one at 5 o'clock, and we had to go to each one of them, and we wore our Easter outfits, and there was an Easter parade through the little town of little girls and little boys in their Sunday finest and their Easter finest, and that was a time gone by, but it was a time that I always remember at Easter time. So this is a different kind of Easter for us, a different kind of celebration, a different kind of joy that we get to experience, a different kind of beingness that we get to experience on this Easter Sunday, because things have changed so much. Things are so different. Yet we know that joy comes from within. And so we have to be in that place where we are as we just allow ourselves to celebrate this time, to allow ourselves to be in this time, allow ourselves to really get into the energy, the consciousness of what Easter is all about. Let me just back up a minute and just remind you that our theme for the year is life is for living. Just say yes. Life is for living, just say yes. Life is for living, just say yes. And during this time even, life is for living. Just say yes to it. Yes, just say yes to where we are. Life is for living. And the theme for the month of April is precious moments. Precious moments. Precious moments. And I selected that theme because it is so important for us as we go through this time in recognizing that life is for living, to really look at and experience the precious moments of our lives. Those moments that are valuable, and all moments are valuable. Those moments that are priceless, those moments that we need to savor in each and every moment of each and every day. And we need to find them throughout the day as we go through what appear to be dark times. You know, another thing about Easter is that there's so much symbolism around Easter. You know, the crucifixion was the giving up, the giving up of the whole personality to the Christ consciousness. And that's what Jesus was doing, giving up the whole personality, the man Jesus, as he moved into Christ consciousness. And the resurrection was what was the rising up, the uplifting of the human into the divine, the uplifting of the human consciousness, the whole person into the Christ consciousness. And so resurrection is not something that just happens one day a year. Resurrection happens all the time. It happens in each and every moment of each and every day, and we each have an opportunity to move into that consciousness of resurrection all the time, of rising up, of allowing our consciousness to rise up into the Christ consciousness, letting go of the old, letting go of that which is, and letting the old just die away as we then come into that place of rising up, into that Christ consciousness, the truth of our being, who we truly are. The cross represents the burden, you know, the burdens of life, and just breaking it down, the perpendicular bar of the cross represents the current of the divine life that is within us. That's what it runs throughout us. That's what the perpendicular bar of the cross represents. The horizontal bar represents the cross current of human limitations. The cross current of human limitations. We are always dealing with a cross in our lives. There's always that perpendicular bar. There's always that divine current, that divine life that runs through everything, that divine truth that is in everything. And then it crosses the cross current of human limitations, of human ideas, of human beliefs. And so the resurrection, the rising up for us, is to let go of the human beliefs, let go of the limiting beliefs that we have. And that's what Jesus taught. That was the whole message of the resurrection, is that we can enter the gateway of heaven, the kingdom of God, not through death, but through releasing our limiting beliefs while we're here. releasing our limiting beliefs while we're here. That's what the resurrection is all about. And when we get to recognize that, we recognize that a resurrection is always going on. And that's the consciousness we want to be in, the consciousness of there's a resurrection going on. There's a resurrection going on. There's a resurrection going on in my life right here, right now. There's a resurrection going on right here, right now in our world. There's a resurrection going on in our individual lives, in our communities, everywhere. There's a resurrection happening. But you know, the thing that we like to do when we think about the crucifixion and the resurrection, we forget about the time in between. We forget about, that was Good Friday where there was a crucifixion. Then there was Holy Saturday when Jesus was in the tomb. And then there was the third day when he arose, and that was the resurrection. We want to jump from the crucifixion to the resurrection. And we forget about that middle part. We forget about that middle part. If we look at the time that we are going through right now with the virus that's happening, and there's so much loss and so much grief and so much pain and so much darkness, it seems. It seems like this is the crucifixion. And knowing that what we want to do now is jump from the crucifixion to the resurrection and get back to normal. But where we are now is in that middle part. We're in that middle ground. The crucifixion, the middle ground, which is where we are now, that place where transformation happens, because transformation has to happen before we can get to the resurrection. There has to be transformation before we can get to the resurrection. And so I invite you to really allow yourself to be where you are. It's necessary for us to be where we are right now. Be with whatever we're feeling, be with whatever we're experiencing, just be in it. You know, that middle day, Jesus was just in it. He just in it. We don't have any record of what was going on during that time. But he was in it before he had to be in it and to fully surrender to it before he could rise up. And that's what we have to do. We have to be in it. We have to be fully surrendered and willing to surrender to whatever is going on before we can rise up and overcome our limiting beliefs about it. And so that brings me to the topic for today, which is roll away the stone. Roll away the stone. Roll away the stone. You know, the stone is symbolic of what was happening. The tomb in which Jesus was buried was a cave. Back in that day, people were buried in these caves. And then there was a stone, a big boulder that was rolled to the mouth of the cave that would keep out the animals and keep wild animals and keep people from stealing their bodies or whatever else. And then the tomb was sealed with the stone that was placed before the entrance. Let's take a breath. My mind is going faster than my mouth. So what happens was the women of the village would come into the tombs and wash the bodies, cleanse the bodies, anoint them with oil and spices, and prepare them for just continuing on the journey of death and transformation into the next life. Well, when Jesus was put into the tomb on the third day, when the women went to, Mary and the other women went in to anoint the bodies with his body with spices and with oils, they were wondering who was going to roll the stone away, because it's written that the stone weighed as much as a ton. So how could they roll that stone away? They were concerned about that. And when they got there, they realized that the stone had already been moved. The stone was already had already been rolled away. And so they went in, and Jesus wasn't there, of course. But the point is that the stone had been rolled away, and the stone represents any barrier that we may have to our goal, any barrier. Their goal was to go in and anoint the body. But the stone represents anything that may be a barrier for us. And so I ask you, what are the stones that are blocking our hearts? What are the stones that are keeping us from being free? Because once that stone is rolled away, there's freedom. There's renewal. There's an opportunity to start a new life. There's an opportunity to start again. There's an opportunity to move forward. There's an opportunity to move from this place of apparent death into the new place of life. But as long as the stones are there, it's very, very difficult for us to do. Very, very, in fact, it's impossible to do. And so I'm inviting you today to look at the stones in your own life. Where are the stones? What stones are blocking your heart? What stones are keeping you from the resurrection, from experiencing the resurrection? It could be the stone of judgment. It could be the stone of judging what's happening now, how people are responding, reacting to what's happening now. It could be the stone of pity and sadness. It could be the stone of grief. It could be the stone of anger. It could be the stone of anger. But you know what's coming to me? The biggest stone of all, the one that feels like it weighs a ton, is the stone of fear. It's that stone of fear. It's the stone of fear that is the boulder that's blocking everything. And so when we are in that place of fear, then it's impossible for us to get to the resurrection because we cannot move beyond the doorway. We can't move beyond the place where we are because fear has us blocked in there. And so when we roll away that stone of fear, and sometimes we have to take it one little step at a time, one little step at a time, one little step at a time, one little step at a time. Because there are always things that are coming up that makes us fearful. There are always things coming up that makes us, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? Oh my gosh, all these people are losing their jobs. Oh my gosh, I just lost my job. Oh my gosh, we don't have a paycheck coming in. Oh my goodness, somebody that we know is sick. Oh my goodness, it's an oh my goodness kind of mentality that we get into. And when we get into that, then the fear just takes over. And then we start to get into the what ifs, and the what ifs, and the what ifs. And what we have to do is just to stop. We have to just stop and just recognize, okay, this is where I am. This is where we are. This is what's going on. We feel so uncomfortable because we're not sure what's going to happen next. We're not sure what the next thing is going to be. But do you know we've never known what the next thing was going to be? We have never known what the next thing was going to be. Even when we thought life was normal, we didn't know what the next thing was going to be. We didn't know what the next thing was going to happen. A month ago, we would not have thought, 2 months ago, we would not have thought we'd be here in this place. We were planning to go on and go on and go on and do the things that we had planned just with here in our community, our church community. We had our calendar all laid out and classes all set up and guest speakers coming in and workshops happening and concerts planned for the summer and all kinds of things that were going to happen. And here we are. Here we are. Here we are. We would never have thought that we would be in a place where we couldn't see each other, where we couldn't hug each other. We had our meet and greet here at the church on Sunday mornings. And you know what? Those were the kinds of things that we took for granted. And you know, one of the stones that we have to roll away is that stone of taking things for granted and taking people for granted. Because we never know. We have to live in the moment. We have to live in the moment. We have to be aware of each moment being a precious moment. When I look back on those meet and greets that we had, and the times that we got to hug each other, and the times that we got to wander up and down the aisles and not come back to our seats when it was time to come back to our seats here, when I look back on that, oh my gosh, how precious that was. How precious that time was. But you know what? That was in the past. What we have to do now is look at the precious moments that we have right here and right now, in this moment, and make this a resurrection moment. Make this a moment of rising up. Make this a moment of overcoming. Make this a moment of knowing the truth of our being. Make this a moment of recognizing that the divine is in the midst of everything that's going on. Make this a moment of letting go of the human consciousness, the human sense consciousness, to letting go of that into that Christ consciousness, into that higher consciousness, into that higher place. And we do that by surrendering. We do that by opening our minds. We do that by opening our hearts. We do that by trusting the only thing that is, by trusting the only thing that is. We do that by practicing the principles that we know. We do that by coming back to basics, by recognizing that we are each and all made in the image and likeness and out of God itself. And when we come back to that knowing and stand in that knowing, I don't care what's going on, we have to keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it and keep coming back to it. And when we start to do that, when we continue to do that, that's how we shift our consciousness. That's how we move into that place of transformation so that we can experience a resurrection moment. So that we can experience a resurrection moment. And we experience that in each and every moment. And we have to keep saying to ourselves, there's a resurrection happening right here and right now within me. There's a resurrection happening as I let go of this fear. There's a resurrection happening as I let go of taking things for granted, of taking people for granted. As I let go of judging others. As I let go of my sense of lack and limitation of any kind. There's a resurrection happening because when I let go of the lack, I can open myself up to the abundance that is. When I let go of the fact that, yes, I was laid off from my job, but my job was not my source. That was not my source. And when we are so focused on a job or a paycheck or a whatever it may be, whatever channel, that's just a channel through which God works to bring the good into our lives, to show up as good in our lives. So when we get so hung up on the thing, then we lose the awareness of the source. We lose our awareness of the source. God is our source. And yes, I'm not denying or diminishing in any way the fact that it can feel scary when you've lost your job. It can feel scary when you don't have a paycheck. It can feel scary when you don't know where the next meal is coming from. And if we can breathe into that moment and say, you know what, I'm feeling really scary right now, but I know that God is my source. And I know that God is in the midst, and I know that my needs are being met in this moment. And standing in that truth, not deserting the truth now. As Ernest Holmes says, that when we desert the truth in our hour of need, it proves that we don't know the truth. And so we don't want to be in that place. As practicing religious scientists, we want to practice the principles that we know. Yes, I feel the fear, and I know that God is my source. Yes, I feel the fear, and I know that I can rise above this by changing my thinking. By changing my thinking, I can change my life, and I can change my experience. I know that I can come back to basics. And what we have to do, now that we have this time at home, now that we have this time when we can't go out, now that we have this time where we can't socialize other than online, we have a time now to just embrace the silence. We have a time now to embrace our aloneness. Even if there are 5 people in your house, even if there are 7 kids running around, and 2 or 3 dogs. Even in the midst of all that, there is a place to which we can come. There's a place to which we can come that is always awaiting our recognition of it, that is always awaiting our recognition, that place where we can come to be filled up, that place where we can come to be nurtured, that place where we can come to be centered, that place where we can come to recognize who we really are, to remember who we really are, to rise up in consciousness. That place where we can come to overcome our limited beliefs. That place where we can come to overcome our fears. That place where we can come to overcome our sense of lack. That place where we can come to overcome anything that is unlike the unlimited potential that is ours simply by divine birthright. That place to which we can come over and over and over again. And so I'm inviting you this day to experience the resurrection moment. Yes, we are as I said, we're in the crucifixion moment, but we can't jump to the resurrection. Go through the transformation period and know that you're never walking alone. That you're never walking alone. And even as we go through that transformation period, there's a resurrection in that period. Every time we're able to remove a stone, every time we're able to forgive somebody, because this is a good time for reflection about our relationships, about the way we have interacted with each other, the way we interact with each other even now. Even now, even in our social distancing, sometimes we have a chance to reflect on things and we recognize there's a huge forgiveness issue there. There's a huge forgiveness stone blocking the entrance to my heart. And so when I can release and roll away that stone of unforgiveness, then my heart can open. And all the love that is that can pour forth, that's a precious moment. Rolling away that stone of unforgiveness, somebody that you've been holding a grudge against, somebody that you've been resenting, someone that you've been talking about, someone you've been judging, someone you've been blaming. As we go through looking at these, and these may be, some of them may be little pebbles, and some of them may be little rocks, and some of them may be bigger stones, and some of them may be boulders. Some of them may be boulders. But it's up to us to spend this time to take these precious moments that we have to reflect on what it is. What does the stone look like? What is this stone? Where is this stone? And who is going to move it? Who's going to move it? We have to be willing to allow the stones to be rolled away. And that requires us sometimes to do spiritual practice over and over and over and over and over again. And we just keep doing it. We keep going. We keep moving forward so that we can all rise up, so that we can all experience the resurrection, so that we can all experience that new day and that new way that lies ahead. Yes, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But you know what? There can be a block. There can be boulders, there can be stones or whatever to block us from getting to the end of that tunnel where the light is. And so we want to allow the light in fully by standing in the truth that we know and doing what we know is necessary for us to do to free ourselves up. This is an opportunity to live a totally different way, to have a totally different way of life. We're all being called up. We're all being called up to do something different, to be more. We're all being called up to be more. It's no accident that what has happened is happening now. It's no accident that all of a sudden the whole world is being affected by this. It's no accident that we're all being called to look at how we're living, look at what we say we want. How do we? It's interesting how the planet has started to change. How cities that were so overcome with pollution and whatever are now the air is cleaner, because we're all at home. The animals are now coming out more because we're all at home. They have more space. We start to look at all the changes that are happening. Just nature is happening itself. God is just really revealing itself and just really being itself through the animals, being itself through clean air, being itself through nature, being itself without the limitations of humans interfering, that cross current of human beings. And so when we recognize that we're the cross current, our limited beliefs of the cross current, our actions, our thoughts, our consciousness present that cross current, then we have to look at, well, what are my beliefs? How do I change this? So that we can have the life we say we want. How can I change this so that we can move into that place of knowing what God's vision is for this planet, what God's vision is for my life, what God's vision is for this community, what God's vision is for this world. Because you know what? God has a vision. God has a vision for this world. God has his own vision of what it wants to look like, how it wants to show up in this world. And what we want to do is to move into alignment and be in alignment with God's vision so that it can unfold through each of us. Because God's vision can only unfold through us. And so we have to be those open places and those open spaces for God's vision to unfold. And we do that in our resurrection moments. We do that in our moments of opening up. We do that in our moments of standing in the truth that we know, coming back to basics. Coming back to basics, practicing the principles, standing in the truth, recognizing over and over again who we are, standing in our meditation practice more and more, deepening in that practice, deepening in our prayer practice, deepening in our kindness gestures toward each other, toward ourselves, toward our family members that we cooped up in the house with. And we have to practice kindness. We have to practice compassion, being compassionate, recognizing that we are each experiencing this turbulent time in our own unique way. And we have to give each other the space to do that. We have to give each other the space to grow through this time. That's what we're doing. We're all growing through this time. And we have to give each other the space to grow through this time without judgment, without blame, without resentment, without shame. Just giving each other the time and the space to grow through this time. And loving each other through this time as much as we possibly can. Opening our hearts more and more each and every moment of each and every day. That's how we experience these precious moments that lead us to our own resurrection. And so I want us to really allow our mantra to be, as we go through this time, not just today, Easter Sunday, but as we go through this time in our lives, allow our mantra to be, there's a resurrection going on. There's a resurrection going on within me. There's a resurrection going on within my life right here and right now. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. There's a resurrection going on right here, right now. That resurrection, that overcoming, that becoming, because that's what we're all about. We're becoming. Because when Jesus went into that tomb, and 3 days later he came out, he wasn't recognized by his friends because the transformation had happened. The transformation had happened. His friends didn't recognize him. He had to tell them who he was because that consciousness had shifted. And so what if when we came back here together as a community, just here in CLF and in other communities that people who are watching us online may be going back to, what if we go back to those communities and people don't recognize us because we're so different? What if we're so joyful? What if our consciousness has reached a point where people feel like there's a healing happening just being in your presence? There's a healing happening just being in your presence. And do you know that when you are practicing the presence of God, when you are in that place of knowing the truth of your being and who you are, and knowing that there's a resurrection happening in each and every moment, do you know that people are healed simply by being in your presence? People are healed simply by being in your presence. People are healed simply by being in your presence. The healing begins with you. The healing begins with me. And then it expands out. Then it extends out into the world. It extends out into the world. So let's set a goal. Let's set it as our mission to be unrecognizable when we come back, because our consciousness is so high. Our consciousness is so high, people don't recognize us. People come up and start wanting to gossip, and you're like, what are you talking about? Rumor spreading, or whatever the case may be, or judging, or blaming, and you don't even vibrate at that level, so you don't know what they're talking about. That's the place where we want to be. That's the transformation that we have the opportunity to have happen and to experience right here and right now. That is the resurrection moment for each one of us, right here and right now. This is our Easter story. We each have a personal Easter story. This is our Easter story. And so I invite you to experience your own resurrection and to really be aware of it in each and every moment, to be mindful, to say yes to the resurrection that's happening within each one of us right here and right now. And so let's take a breath in this moment as we just say yes. Yes to this precious moment of overcoming our humanness, our human beliefs, our human limitations, as we say yes to opening our hearts and opening our minds and opening our entire being to that Christ consciousness that just awaits our recognition of it, our acceptance of it, our yes to it. So let's just say yes to that Christ consciousness. Let's say yes to this precious moment of resurrection. Let us just say yes right here and right now. And so I invite you to turn within with me in this moment for prayer. Just recognizing that one power, recognizing that one life, recognizing that one being, recognizing that one source, recognizing that one presence, recognizing that one activity, recognizing that one breath, that one intelligence. I choose to call it God, but we don't have to call it anything. We don't have to call it anything. It just is. It just is. Whether we call it anything or not. And this isnness that I call God is my very life. This isness is the life and the source of us all. This is what I know to be true. It is the source of us all. There's nothing that can separate us from it because we are made of God itself. And there's nothing to separate it except our own limited beliefs. And so I'm speaking a word for each of us this day as we let go of our limited beliefs, as we let go of our limiting beliefs, and we open our hearts, allowing the stone of limited beliefs to just be rolled away. And opening our hearts to love, opening our hearts to trust, opening our hearts to abundance, opening our hearts to prosperity, opening our hearts to God. And as we do this, we experience in this resurrection moment. We experience in this moment of moving into that Christ consciousness. We experience in this moment of moving into that place of oneness where there is no separation, where we are transparencies for the divine. This is the word that I speak for each of us this day. And just knowing that as we move into that place of oneness, we move into that place of alignment, we move into that place, that all things are made new in our lives, that healing is happening in our body temples, knowing that every cell, every organ, every tissue, every function of our body is radiating that healing presence of God and responding to that presence of God, whatever we may call the discomfort or the dis-ease. We just move into that place of wholeness and allow God to be itself in and through and as our lives. And I know that our bodies of affairs are filled with God's presence. And any sense of lack, any sense of limitation, any sense of loss is filled with the presence of God. And all things are made new, that which we have thought we lost is renewed, is found, is restored by this word that's being spoken here this day. I know that there's abundance. I know there's prosperity. I know that there is health and there's wholeness. I know that as we release fear, that there's love. There's love, there's trust, there's faith that is being restored right here and right now by in each one of us. And so I just give great thanks. I give great thanks for this awareness that God is all there is. That God is all there is. That God is all there is. And opening my heart as we open our hearts to allow that allness to fill us up. And so I pause momentarily in this circle of prayer so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer. You may speak their names silently or loud, but you may speak them now. So for all those whose names are spoken here this day, I know that God is in the midst of everything. God is in the midst of whatever's going on, whatever situation, whatever circumstance, whatever event that shows up, God is in the midst of it, and healing is happening everywhere. All those who are impacted by the coronavirus in their physical bodies, I know that God is in the midst. I know that healing is happening. I know that there's a dissolving anything that appears to block this healing presence and this wholeness of God, that we are all restored to that oneness, to that place of oneness and of knowing the truth of oneness. This prayer goes out to everybody on this planet, anybody needing a prayer this day. I know simply that God is. And I give great thanks in this moment. Thank you, Father, Mother God. I just allow it to be. It is done, and so it is.